Next up, we have Askari Metals, ASX code A2S. Askari Metals is a Southern African exploration company. The company is developing its UIS lithium project in Namibia's Cape Cross UIS pegmatite belt. Presenting for the company today is Cliff Fitzhenry, Chief Project and Exploration Manager. Cliff, thank you so much for your time. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Abby. Good afternoon to all your listeners as well, and thanks for the opportunity to present Askari Metals. Askari is listed on the ASX under the ticker AS2, and we're a junior minerals exploration company focused on Africa. So some of our recent highlights, our flagship project is the UIS Lithium Tanzania Project in the Eronga region of Namibia. If you look at the map on the right, we've got three key licenses which make up the project. These are 8535, 7345, and 7626. They're all right next to and surrounding the Andrada UIS mining operation, which is an 81 million ton at 0.73% lithium oxide and 0.15% tin resource, as well as the Spodumene Hill project. We are 230 kilometers away from the deep water port of Walvis Bay. And we believe Namibia is a very mining-friendly jurisdiction. It's heavily underexplored for lithium. The UIS project itself is on the Cape Cross UIS lithium pegmatite belt, which is a spodumene and petalite-rich pegmatite belt. We've had some very high grades through our rock chip sampling programs that we've done, up to 3.3% lithium oxide from some of our sampling. And we're looking at any strategic acquisitions along this belt, the Cape Cross pegmatite belt. One of the key work programs we completed this year was the phase 1 trenching program on license 7345. This was an extensive trenching campaign which focused on our 4 high priority pegmatite targets, OP, PS, DP, and K9. Some of the key results that came out of that trenching program was that the mapping of the OP pegmatites revealed it to be a much more significant body and pegmatite body than previously thought. Concurrent to the trenching program, we also continued with our systematic mapping and rock chip sampling throughout the 3 licenses. And some of the results that came out of that was the discovery of major new pegmatites on license 8535, which we called the Kestrel pegmatites. Earlier this year, we also expanded our clean energy focus to include uranium projects within Tanzania. And we acquired 2 uranium projects recently, the Matanga and ERC projects. Matanga is located in southern Tanzania, which we view as an emerging tier 1 uranium province, which hosts a number of uranium deposits and occurrences, including the major Inyota deposits. Both the Matanga and ERC projects contain strong radiometric anomalies, which haven't been tested previously. And we believe southern Tanzania is a heavily underexplored region, which hasn't been subjected to modern exploration techniques. Moving on to our next slide. So we're very comfortable with Namibia as a jurisdiction that's underexplored for lithium and other critical minerals. As I mentioned, UIS is very proximal to some strong key infrastructure. It's 230 kilometers from the deep water port of Walvis Bay. Half of that road is fully paved and the other half is currently being upgraded. And we are right next to the UIS tin operation owned by Andrada Mine. We've conducted a number of systematic focused exploration programs, and we've identified a number of highly prospective scalable pegmatites. So your typical LCT type mineralized pegmatites. The OP pegmatite is shaping up to be our flagship pegmatite on the project. It's got a strike length, which we identified through mapping, of more than 2 kilometers and average thickness of 12 meters and up to 26 meters thickness. We've got a pipeline of further pegmatites as well, One of them is the K9 pegmatite, which is spodumene dominant. And we are focusing on low-cost, high-impact exploration to develop this pipeline of pegmatites. And our strategic downstream partner is Huayou Cobalt out of China. Onto our next slide. Just a summary of the exploration paradigms in 2023. I joined the company in June 2023, so a lot of this work was completed before my time. We did a number of phases of rock chip sampling and mapping, as well as 3 phases of RC drilling. The 2 licenses at the time was 7345 and 8535. We later added license 7626. On 7345, we collected over 1,000 rock chip samples, a number of high grades, lithium, tantalum, and tin grades in those rock chip samples. And as I mentioned, 2 phases of RC drilling, and some skinny results on the pegmatites, nothing much to write home about, but certainly showing that some of these pegmatites are strongly mineralized. And on 8535, also a number of rock chip samples collected, some very high grades as well, and a first phase RC drilling campaign. Moving on to the next slide. One thing we did was, when I joined, is to step back and have a look at all the data that we had gathered. We had an abundance of chemical data, so it allowed us to plot up all the elemental ratios, to map out the fertility of the pegmatites on the project. The project contains an abundance of pegmatites, high-carbon pegmatites. And what we wanted to do was just map out and determine which are the fertile and more prospective pegmatites to focus on. Not all the pegmatites are mineralized. There are some barren pegmatites as well, so we needed to step back and look at the data and ensure that we focused our efforts on the correct pegmatites. We plotted up a number of elemental ratios which mapped the fertility of these pegmatites and allowed us to define zones of fertile prospective pegmatites. We termed this the corridor of interest, and this is defined, as I mentioned, by the geochemical elemental ratios as well as the geophysical data. Within this corridor of interest, we've also got the Andrida OIS pegmatites, as well as the spodumene hole B1, C1 pegmatite. The zone runs northeast to southwest for about 15 kilometers. It's about 5 kilometers wide. And we're using this zone very much to focus our exploration activities going forward. Moving on to the next slide. So as I mentioned, one of the key programs we did in 2024 at the OIS project was the trenching program. This was a 7,000 meter trenching program which focused on our 4 key pegmatite targets, OP, DP, PS, and K9. All of these pegmatites are typical LCT type pegmatites. They show all the visible characteristics of LCT pegmatites, and they occur within the previously defined corridor of interest. The trenching program, we excavated 135 trenches, totaling just over 7,200 meters, and this generated just under 2,100 1-meter channel samples. As I mentioned, one of the key things was the trench mapping revealed the OP pegmatite to be a lot more significant than previously thought. It strikes over a length of more than 2 kilometers, averages 10 to 12 meters thick, up to 26 meters wide, and there's a southwest zone which shows considerable thickening, averaging 21 meters thick. Moving on to our next slide. The image on the right just shows you in the distance on the left, OP pegmatites. In the foreground in the center, the PS pegmatites, and you can see our trenches going from left to right across the picture. The road on the right from OIS to Henty's Bay, which is currently being upgraded. And then in the distance on the right, the Andrida OIS operation. So we are right next door to Andrida's OIS operation and directly on strike as well. The 3 other pegmatites which we focused the trenching on was the PS, DP, and K9 pegmatite targets. And yeah, all these pegmatites are, as I mentioned, strong LCT type pegmatites, and yeah, very prospective. Moving on to our next slide. Concurrent to the trenching that we did on 7345, we also did a lot of focused mapping as well as rock chip sampling in the background on 7345 and 8535. One of the key things to come out of this work this year was the discovery of the kestrel pegmatites. This is on 8535. And this is looking to be quite a significant pegmatite as well. And so we think it could even compete with OP as the flagship pegmatite for the project. Strike length of 2 kilometers from surface mapping, outcropping widths of plus 30 meters, and a number of very high-grade rock chip assays which we've collected to date, very mineralized lithium, tantalum, and tin grades. And yeah, all your visible characteristics of LCT type pegmatites with visible spodumene and lepidolite mineralization observed. So we're looking forward to developing this pegmatite and looking to trench it as the next phase. Moving on to the next slide. So we had an opportunity earlier this year to move into Tanzania and into uranium, which we believe is very much in line with our clean energy mandates. So we are moving into southern Tanzania, where we picked up the Matanga project. We believe southern Tanzania it's got a huge amount of exploration potential. We see this as an emerging tier 1 uranium province. There's a number of uranium projects active at the moment in the area. And despite having historical exploration, we see a lot of this ground hasn't undergone modern geophysical techniques. We're very comfortable with Tanzania as a jurisdiction. We've got a strong in-country team. And yeah, like I said, we diversify our clean energy focus to include in-demand uranium. And we've picked up 2 projects, the Matanga and ERC uranium projects so far, but we are currently reviewing a number of other highly prospective projects in Tanzania. And we're basically leveraging off our African knowledge and our African knowledge base, as well as using our African technical team to work in both Namibia and Tanzania. Moving on to the next slide. So as I mentioned, we recently acquired the Matanga and ERC uranium projects. These you can see with they're represented by the orange stars on the map. Matanga is in the south, within the sort of developing uranium province in the south there. ERC is up in the north. We worked with our local Tanzanian partners to fast-track direct license staking of these 2 projects. Matanga is some 70 kilometers southeast of the world-class Yota uranium project, which was sold by ASX listed Mantra Resources in 2011 for $1.16 billion. And that has a resource of 124 million pounds at 306 ppm uranium oxide. Matanga is also less than 220 kilometers from Lotus Resources Kalakera projects, and just across the lake in Malawi. Moving on to our next slide. So the Matanga project was part of a larger license package owned by a company called Euronex. The reason we pegged it is that it's because it's got a strong radiometric anomaly. And important to note, this hasn't been tested through any exploration or ground truthing work thus far. On the map, the Matanga project is in the orange square in the bottom right portion. Yeah, it's a very clearly defined radiometric anomaly, some 10 by 6 kilometers in size. It's located within Karoo sandstone, which we know has potential for roll front uranium deposits. Limited follow-up groundwork being completed, and SRK Australia completed a detailed review of the airborne radiometric anomalies at Matanga for uranium mineralization, and they determined preferential channel sand flow directions in the uranium-bearing Karoo sandstones on the project. Moving on to the next slide. The ERC projects, it also contains strong radiometric anomalies. It's situated in the north. The radiometric anomalies are a bit different though. They're more linear and discrete. It's a different geological setting altogether. The reason we picked up this project was because of the strong radiometric anomalies. And we see these as mapping out fluvial systems which are draining from the uranium-bearing granites north of the project. So we see this potentially supporting a mineralization model of uranium being sourced from the granites in the north. And so we see potential for secondary placer-type uranium deposits within these fluvial systems. So we're very much looking forward to getting boots on the ground on this project and testing these radiometric anomalies. Moving on to the next slide. So as I mentioned, the key strategy in Tanzania is to build a world-class uranium portfolio, which we believe we're doing. The Matanga and ERC uranium projects are the first step in that strategy. They're our first two acquisitions. We are currently reviewing a number of other highly prospective uranium projects in the country. And the intention is to build an exploration team in Namibia to then conduct high-impact, low-cost exploration programs to test these strong radiometric anomalies and then to generate high-confidence, robust drill targets. As I mentioned, we're reviewing other projects, so we're going to be aiming to build a dominant strategic uranium footprint, very much focused on the south of the country, which is where we'll be targeting the Karoo sandstones. And we see this area developing as a potential tier 1 uranium province. We'll be targeting obviously the roll front and tabular uranium deposits within the Karoo sandstones and advancing projects using our African technical team. So yeah, just to end off, maybe in summary, we see some strong news flow up ahead. Coming forth, obviously, from Tanzania, we are busy reviewing a number of other highly prospective projects. So we'll be closing on further acquisitions in the near future. As soon as our licenses are awarded, we will be getting boots on the ground through our Tanzanian exploration team, which we're currently building. So we'll be looking at conducting low-cost, high-impact exploration programs in Tanzania. And that also doesn't take the focus away from UIS as well, which we see as still as an excellent project. A lot of, a huge amount of potential there. We will continue with our systematic exploration programs at UIS. We've got a pipeline of very prospective pegmatites, which we're going to be developing. Mapping and rock chip sampling is continuing on those 3 licenses. The aim is to then move into a second phase trenching program. First phase trenching program on license 8535, where we'll test the Kestrel pegmatite, and then a second phase program on 7345, where we'll test further pegmatites. And the aim is to then develop high confidence, robust drill targets, which we will look into to test early on in the year through a maiden resource drilling campaign. Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you, Cliff. Thank you for your presentation. We do have a few questions as well, if you have the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. So what do you see as differentiating your lithium project from other lithium projects in Namibia?
I think the quality of our project is the prospectivity of the license. I think we've got one of the best projects in Namibia, if not the best. We're right next to Andrada's UIS operation, on strike with that operation. There's a number of other well-known pegmatites along the belt. We think we've got the best licenses on that belt. And what I've seen on the ground as well, all the pegmatites are very prospective, very nice LCT type pegmatites. And it's just about, carrying out strategic and systematic exploration on these pegmatites. And when we do bring a drill rig back onto the property, to make sure we have very high confidence in what we're drilling and to advance those pegmatites from there.
And Cliff, could you comment on the country risk for exploration in Tanzania and Namibia?
Yeah, I mean, we very comfortable with both countries. Namibia is very much a mining and exploration focused country. Number of junior exploration companies plus majors are there at the moment. Tanzania is a new country to our portfolio, but we've been looking at it for a number of years as well. Tanzania obviously has a bit of history, but everything coming out of Tanzania in the recent couple of years has been very strong, pro-business, pro-mining investment. And we've seen, a number of companies, especially junior companies, go back into the country and invest into exploration there. And there are a number of majors there as well, Barrick, Anglo Gold. So yeah, we're very comfortable with the country, and we've got a lot of good personnel on the ground in Tanzania as well.
And Cliff, we do have a shareholder that's a bit worried that you have too many projects, I guess, on the go and isn't focused enough on the priority asset. We were wondering if you could comment on that. It seems like you have a lot on your plate, so I can imagine it's busy.
Yeah, it's very busy, and yeah, no, it's very correct. We've also got a portfolio of Australian projects, which I haven't even mentioned. So yeah, it's a very good question. We very much focus. We see ourselves as an African-focused clean energy company. We will be looking to divest our Australian portfolio. We have released a few releases in the recent past, which has sort of been strategic reviews of our Australian assets. But as I mentioned, that's not going to be the core focus of the company going forward. Our focus is going to be very much on Namibia and Tanzania. We see lithium and uranium as being very complementary. It's been a tough market for lithium and for lithium juniors in the last year, 6 to 12 months. So we see the addition of Tanzania and uranium as being very complementary to Namibia. It's taken nothing away from our UIS project. And we will be fast tracking both projects to drill ready status, and hopefully we'll be able to conduct drilling activities on both projects early 2025.
Okay, and then so is that as well with the UIS assay results? When can we expect those?
Yeah, it's been a frustrating wait. Obviously, the UIS trenching assays. We had an option earlier on in the year to focus or an opportunity to take on in Tanzania. We took that opportunity, so we directed our focus and funding towards acquisitions in Tanzania. That's been the cause of the delay of the trenching assays. I understand our shareholders' frustration with that. We do see those assays being received in the next month at the latest. And we're very much looking forward to that because that is going to define our work going forward. And like I said, we're still continuing activities at UIS, and we will be looking to do a second phase of trenching early on in the new year anyway.
Thanks, Cliff. So how are you placed in terms of funding future exploration work, and how do you plan to fill any funding gap?
So we have a shareholders meeting next week, next Friday. And following that, we will be embarking on a capital raise, so early November. And that's going to essentially allow us to continue work at UIS. And the work at UIS is very much low-cost work in any case. And that funding is also going to be directed to Tanzania, completing the acquisitions there, as well as setting up a team in Tanzania. And as soon as our licenses are awarded, we'll be getting boots on the ground. So that's going to be funding all those exploration activities.
And what kind of local infrastructure could you take advantage of for the lithium project?
Yeah, I mean, it's infrastructure rich Namibia. We've got, as I mentioned, the highway direct to the deep water port of Walvis Bay. There's Andrada next door. So there's a number of things we can certainly use. We think it's an excellent location for a lithium project. So yeah, I think everything is there for us for that project. We just have to continue with the exploration, hopefully define a resource early on in the year.
And then what partnerships or collaborations are being considered?
Yeah, I mean, we're always open to any partnerships. We've got on our share registry, Huayo Cobalt, which is our downstream partner. And there's a lot of collaboration we do with Huayo. We've hosted a number of site visits with them at Voice. And there's a number of other players as well that we will consider as well. I think for now we know what we need to do, and that's continue with our exploration work and fast track our activities on the ground. But yeah, we're certainly open to any partnerships or collaboration on that side.
And could you comment on the ESG side of your projects?
Yeah, I mean, ESG is obviously a strong focus. It's a strong focus for any junior exploration company these days. And we ensure that we tick all the boxes. We ensure that everything is compliant. We've done all our ECC licensing and certificates on our OIS projects. And the same will be done in Tanzania. We've got very good partners on the ground there. You'll advise us. And yeah, along with the exploration work, we will ensure all our ECG is up to date and compliant.
Thanks, Cliff. And then the last question from me, what are some key milestones that investors can keep an eye out for in the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, I think one of the big ones is obviously the trenching assay results, which will be coming out from that first phase trenching we did on 7345. The exploration work is continuing there, so there's a steady stream of assay results that come out from rock chip sampling and mapping. We'll then move into a second phase of trenching on the project, which will also deliver mapping and assay results. And then the ultimate aim at OIS is to feed into a maiden resource drilling campaign early on 2025. On the Tanzania side, work is going to be happening concurrently with work at OIS. So we'll be aiming to get boots on the ground as soon as our licenses are awarded. And yeah, it's just about doing low-cost exploration on the ground there. We are reviewing a number of other highly prospective projects. So we'll be aiming to close further acquisitions there and add to our portfolio. And where the projects allows us, we will be getting drill rigs on site as well to drill test a number of these projects.
Thanks so much for your presentation, Cliff. That's all we have time for today. We'd love to get you on in the new year when we can have an update on a few of those results. So I hope you have a great weekend and thanks again.
Thanks very much, Abby. Yeah, I'd love to be on in the new year as well.